Thank you so much, Jeevan. Thank you very much, and very warm welcome to everyone here. And because we have people all over the world, so that's why Jeevan is wishing everyone morning, afternoon, and evening. So, I wanted to ask you all, what comes to your mind when you hear about battles, battlefields, wars, and warfares? And also, what comes to your mind when you think about combat missions, guerrilla warfare, aircraft carriers, or submarines, rockets, and missiles? And then we move on to an entirely different world. We talk about businesses, small, medium enterprises, public companies, multinationals, PLCs, GLCs. Then we talk about growth, downturns, profit and loss accounts, and balance sheet, cash flow, human resources, production, revenue, cost, all of these things which are relating to a different world from the world of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. Now, we at MV International and Resolve Asia have been bringing conferences and webinars for quite some time now, for almost like a few years. And most of these are knowledge sharing. Basically, we are helping our communities and we want to add value. Now, we also found that many successful businesses have been built on the foundation of history's battlefields. Then we asked ourselves this question: can strategies and blueprints that are used in wars, can they really be used effectively in the meeting rooms or the boardrooms of companies and organizations? Are they really relevant? Are they applicable? Now, some of you may have these questions as well, and we would definitely want to ask you, be active in the chat box, put down any questions as and when they come to you. Now, to help us to go through this, we asked two luminaries. We have got two experts on this particular domain, and they are going to be helping us. I want to introduce you to the two of them. The first person is Brigadier Sushil Bhasin, and I think you will be able to see Brigadier there online. And Brigadier actually served the Indian Army for 34 years, from 1970s to 2004. And during this service, he has actually held various command, staff, and instructional appointments. He has been all over India and elsewhere. Now, for the last 15 years, he has been in training, corporate training. He has done more than 600 corporate programs. He is a TEDx speaker. He has written books, and now he focuses his efforts as a time investment strategist. He is a speaker, trainer, and author. He is a TEDx speaker. He's a keynote speaker. He's a master corporate trainer and an accomplished author. Best of all, what I love about him, he is a master storyteller. Now, he believes in the change of the heart set that would really lead to transformation. So I want to say hello to Brigadier. Brigadier.
Hello, Nara. Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I just said in the chat box, let us know where you are from. And I'm finding a very, very good audience. I really want to thank each one of you for investing your time, effort, energy, and money in this program. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. A very, very warm welcome to you, all the way from India, from Mumbai. Now, the other person that we have, the other luminary, is Major Dr. Prabhakaran Jayaraman. And Major Dr. Prabha, he is a former education officer of the Malaysian Armed Forces. His area of expertise in the military is instructional system design. I'm going to let him explain to you what is that. But after he completed his military service, he has been, I believe, for more than 2 decades. After he completed his military service in the year 2000, Major Prabha was appointed as head of Marine Technology Academy in Malaysia. He was responsible for the technology transfer from Germany and the training program of US dollars 1.5 billion for the Royal Malaysian Navy shipbuilding project. He's based out of Lumut. That's another beautiful place that you all should visit. When you get there, please give him a call. Currently, Major Prabha is the Chief Executive Officer of Samudra Management Consultants. He is an authorized master trainer by the Malaysian government. And he conducts also the Train the Trainer program. He has conducted training in more than 14 countries. So very warm welcome to you, Major Prabha.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nara. It's an honor to share the stage with General Sushil and all of you, my friends. Thank you.
Very, very
Many of
warm
my
welcome.
friends in India will wonder why is he saying that. Uh, Other than the Indian Army, most armies, the rank brigadier is known as Brigadier General. And so when he says general, I get a little embarrassed because in India, people would say you're unnecessarily elevating your rank. So,
Okay.
So we are all among friends, no wars, no battles. But what we want to know is we want to know and we want to learn. As Brigadier always says, knowing is not enough, but applying what you know is what is important, right? So I really want to say that we are in a very, very safe environment. We are here to learn, we are here to share, and we also want to add value to you also. Any of you who has got, like I said, questions, comments, feedbacks, please throw them into the chat box. We've got the MV team to help you with that. Now, I thought we were going to do a very, very quick introduction. We have finished introduction, and I would like to take as much of the airtime from both Brigadier and Major and go straight into the discussion. And I'm actually going to ask them very quickly because both of them have been in the armed forces. And, I just want to maybe give them 3 minutes to explain a little bit of what was their background and what drove them from their past, I would say the wonderful position that they have been, what drove them from that to where they are now in the corporate training, education, learning and development field. Brigadier, please.
so I belong to a place called Shimla, and I used to be walking to school when I was a little kid in the nursery or kindergarten. And when you used to be walking, there used to be few army officers walking, and not really walking, marching to the Western Command headquarters in Shimla. And somewhere I used to always find that they are unique people. They walk together. They're smart. They are, the uniform used to have some type of attraction in me. And that was a time I decided, it used to be a dream. Can I be an army officer? If I go into that story, that would be taking 1 hour itself. But I joined the Scenic School. I joined NDA, and I went through a lot of challenges. I was rejected medically, but I was determined to go through it. And somewhere God was kind that my medical appeal board worked, and I joined the Indian Army. I joined through the National Defense Academy, and I'm very proud to have always wear this. And my tie is also NDA. So if somebody says, what is the best thing that happened to you in your life? I say National Defense Academy. I'm so proud of it. Now, the army career was very good, but I had a medical problem for which, after 5 years of serving in the Bihar regiment, that is infantry, I had to shift to Army Service Corps, which is a logistics corps. And logistics corps does have its own limitations in terms of promotion and all. So when you have an ambition of becoming a brigadier, you look at commanding a brigade. You want to be a general, you want to be commanding a division and a corps, but not being a staff officer, not being somebody who's only recommending and never an authority of executing. And therefore, somewhere I was getting a little disappointed with the type of restriction I was going to serve the army with. And after serving the army for 34 years, there's a story, and I'm going to give you the link of that later. I don't want you to go to that, but there was something when I was a chairman of Army School Bareilly, I felt like coming out to educate people. And I thought, I've served the army enough for 34 years. Now let me serve my nation. And I left a career, a brilliant career, and deliberately chose to come into the training field. I was very passionate about training. I have done training for 34 years. In my army training, right from 1970, when I was training recruits, which is the grassroots level. And those who don't understand recruits, it is basically converting a villager into a soldier. And then 25 years later, I was in the Army Training Command, where you're formulating training doctrine for the Indian Army. Now, in this wide spectrum, I was an instructor 3 times. I commanded a training establishment of one of the establishments where I'd been an instructor. I was in the faculty of studies in the Army War College, a very coveted appointment for an ASA officer. I did the higher command course. I did everything which was training oriented. Then in my practical life, I commanded a battalion in the deserts. I was a second in command of a battalion in mountains. I've done training in plains, in riverine terrain, in jungles, in high altitude. And therefore, I found I used to love training and I had an experience with very, very few people can be exposed to. And that is the way I transferred into the civil world. Now, in the 15 years that I've spent in the army, sorry, in this corporate world, I've been into leadership and team building. I started as an outbound trainer. And very soon I realized that how long will I keep doing outbound training? I need to get into other things as well. So I started doing indoor workshops, but my specialty was always experiential learning and facilitation. I was not one who could download information. I always felt that PowerPoint was not my game, because in PowerPoint you keep getting bullets. And my training always said that bullets were meant for killing, not for learning. Okay, so I was more on the practical front and not on the bullet front, not on the bullet on the PowerPoint. Right.
Thank you.
Then it was about 4 years back when I got into the. I started a program called Train the Super Trainer. It's my signature program. And that's the time I used to tell my students, come online, that is the future. And therefore today I find that at my age of 69, I am technologically not very good, but good enough to do my webinars. So when people in COVID-19 started learning Zoom, I have been doing Zoom webinars for the last 4 years. And I was very comfortable. And first webinar I did on 22nd of March, the first day of Janta curfew in India, before the actual lockdown started. And today I am on my 65th webinar in the lockdown.
Wow.
So that's all what I'd like to say. I'm now doing a program called Train the Online Trainer. And in that, I'm actually working on how can we make the virtual world, the online world, as close to the real life training that we did. So that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Brigadier and I had a discussion last week, and I was very comforted, or it was very interesting to note that both of us bought the computers, the 8086 and the 80286 computers, 80 computers, way back around the same time. So that was very interesting. I thought that we entered into the computer. So Major Prabha, perhaps I could ask you, just give us a few minutes to tell us about what you did and what drove you to where you were to where you are now in the corporate training world.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Nara, ladies and gentlemen. Listening to Brigadier Sushil, I realized when he started his career in the army, I was only 5 years old.
Okay.
Right. So I went to school in Malaysia, of course, and then I was privileged enough to go to university. When I went to university in 1985, there was only 5 universities in Malaysia. Today we have about 100 universities.
Wow.
So anyone who goes to universities in the early 80s is considered privileged. And in university, I went into studying chemistry with education. So my expertise is to bring complex concept into a simple mechanism for learning. And then I had the privilege of joining what we call as the Reserve Officers Training Unit. So in the university, we wore uniform. And then I joined the army. I'm a major. My military officers are the frontliners or the infantry unit. There's a lot of support happening behind the scene for the infantry guys to do their job. So my expertise is in instruction system design. And in the Malaysian Armed Forces, we have, I'm sure in many other armed forces, including India, we have what we call as a short service commission. So after completing my 10 years service, I joined the corporate world. But we were lucky within the Royal Malaysian Naval Base. There was in the Malaysian armed forces, we inherited our assets, our ships from the British. So when they left after the independence, they left the ships, and times we need to replace them. And my company, my organization known as PSC Naval Dockyard was given the strategic role of acquiring the technology from Germany, Blom and Voss in Hamburg. And I was privileged to be the responsible for technology transfer and capacity building. By then, I was an instructional system design expert. On the opportunity basis, I'll explain that in the future. So after about 25 years in the military and traveling quite a bit of countries and acquiring the idea of learning transfer, because learning means not acquiring certificates. You know, in today's world, acquiring certificate, you can go to LinkedIn Learning and just get your certificate. But in military, and I'm sure in many other areas, learning means change in behavior. If you don't learn well in business, the business can go bankrupt. But if you don't learn well in military, you will kill yourself and be responsible to the death of your fellow brother officers and men. And you don't want to live like that. So based on that experience, after 25 years, I've decided to share the art of learning and the art of teaching with the larger community. The Malaysian Armed Forces, we have only 80,000. We are a small armed forces, but we have 30 million people. And with the cyber virtual world, the entire world is your platform. So my little experience in the armed forces, I would like to share in the art of learning and using learning to bring the result or the desired change in behavior. We'll talk more about this, Mr. Nara.
Sure. Thank you. Fantastic. I think there are so many values and concepts that we would really want to understand and learn from both of you.
Sure.
And like what Brigadier was talking about, taking a villager and into a recruit who could then end up really becoming a general at some point in time. And the similarly, like you have been in charge of billions of dollars in terms of the naval ship projects. So one of the things that well perhaps we can go straight into what you have been doing and how you actually add value to the corporate and the business world, because that's what we are here to really find out. And how would you apply, let's say, the principles of war in terms of we know when we start talking about war, Sun Tzu, art of war, and everything, these are all like commonplace. But now we have both of you here to actually talk to us. Tell us what and how do you apply the principles of war to the corporate and the business circumstances? Brigadier.
Yeah, so, actually right from the beginning, when I stepped into the corporate world, the first thing was to translate the army experience of leadership and teamwork, because I stepped into that world of corporate training where I was handling that. When you're talking about leadership and teamwork, I don't think there is any organization other than the armed forces which actually teaches you leadership in the real sense. I say that very strongly because many management principles have been carved out of the experience of the armed forces. Now, with that background, it was very easy for me to keep translating. And as I kept going into corporate training programs, and I was very new to that field, I've never till today worked in a corporate environment. And one day when I was going for a meeting to a CEO, and I used to say, I've never worked in the corporate world, or something like that. I realized that I can't say that anymore, because now I understand the corporate world. And even if I was not in it, I am gaining a lot of knowledge. And then the confidence of being able to relate the army lessons into corporate lessons started happening very automatically. I also, at that point of time, by luck, because Google wasn't so active those days, that I found this book, series of books, which were, somebody had translated the Sun Tzu's Art of War into business, into trading, into many things. There were 5 volumes, and I still have them. So there was, when I started having that little logical way of coming to the most likely or a most sound operational plan. And I found that that same format could work easily for the corporate world. So like in that, we start with, for example, aim. So aim is common. We have an aim, you have an aim, you have a vision statement like what we do. And then you say, okay, information about the enemy. Here the corporate says information about the competitor. Okay, he says ground or your own information. So you also do your own strength analysis. Then he says ground. The next factor in that is ground. Okay, and ground for us is terrain. And for the corporate world, it is a market. So what is our ground is their market. And then we come to surprise, which is common. It comes to time, which is common. So there I found that if we follow the same appreciation format, it gives you a very good business plan. And when I started applying this, people said, wow, that is so simple. So why don't we do it? I said, you tell me, why don't you do it? And that is the way I started doing. And in one of the things that happened to me very often, that when I ask people, what do you want in teamwork? What is that one thing that you want to do better than others? And people used to come out with time management. And I found that for me, it was in my DNA, right from my Scenic School to NDA. You learned how to manage your time and importance of time. The value, importance, and relevance of time was very, very important. And for me, it was very easy to translate that into the corporate world. I also found that the corporate world was very casual about it. You know, oh, if they want to do something by Monday, they would easily do by Wednesday and things like that. So I started using the army examples and culture to change the way they think about time. And that is the time I started looking at time management. I took on to Brian Tracy. Incidentally, I have spent over 25 to 30 lakhs on my own personal development ever since I left the army. Because I thought what I did in the army is fine, but to be in the corporate world, I have to reorientate myself. I have to get into that. So I went to Sydney to do a workshop, a seminar with Tony Robbins. I did another one in Singapore with him. I did Brian Tracy. I did Michael Lozier and many others. So when I did Brian Tracy, I learned some very good things about time management from him. And I started following him. I started taking his courses after taking my one seminar with him. And then he became quite popular as one of my popular trainers. And then I decided to write this book, $1 Million Second. And $1 Million Second was endorsed by Brian Tracy. And that was the best thing that happened to me. And now I look at transferring that knowledge of value, importance, and relevance of time to the corporate world. So that is my focus right now. Although I do leadership and teamwork, but I feel I can bring value to people and change the way people can utilize this currency of time, which is the most valuable currency. People know its value, but they don't realize it. And it's my job to see how we can create a society of time-conscious people. And I will urge all of you here today who are listening to this, would you like to join me in that mission of making the world more time-conscious? Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think when we talk about time, we always think about, the story when someone says, everyone remembers the fastest man in the world who ran the fastest mile, whether he ran it in 10 seconds and 100 meters, etc., etc. But then we never remember the second fastest man. And that shows the difference between what a fraction of a second make to someone for the rest of their life. So yeah, that team, like what you put in the chat group, team is something which we all need to be very, very cognizant about. So Major Prabha, could you tell us how do you put forth, your principles of war, etc., whatever you have learned, and how do you translate that into the corporate and business world?
Sure. Brigadier Sushil has given a wonderful summary of these. If you Google for principle of war, you will get Klaus, you will get Sun Tzu, generally about 10 principles has been focused. In some countries, this has been modified. So in Malaysia, we adopt these principles. And let me start with the first principle: clarity of purpose. Whatever we need to do, we need to have purpose. And in the army, our purpose is to destroy enemy's capability and the will to fight. We can destroy the capability with all the assets, but the will to fight requires not only weapon, but also psychological warfare. Forget about the military warfare. Now comes to our own individual life. Every day, we have a war within us. There's one person will say like what Brigadier Sushil says, manage time well. So you might put alarm at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. You wanted to wake up. That is the coach in you. The critic in you will say, oh, for today, why not let an hour later? So every day, there's a war within us. So my advice is, to myself at least, whatever you do, have a clarity of purpose, whether as an individual or whether as an organization. So for an organization, let us just Google for Google's purpose. Google will say, I'll be responsible to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So Google is allowing us to use information in structured way. That means democratization of learning. 50 years ago, or maybe 100 years ago, only the privileged few will have the ability to learn. Majority of the people will be doing what their grandfathers or parents did. As such, you don't see any social mobility. Within few decades, knowledge is accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So my take from the armed forces is, whatever you do, have clarity of purpose. So that purpose will give you meaning. After a couple of years working in the armed forces, when I became a corporate trainer, I was conducting a training in a hospital. It's about performance management system, part of the leadership program that I used to do. So there was a doctor and couple of senior management team of the hospital. And then while we were having our break, an old auntie were coming and serving coffee and sweeping and so on. So right after that, I asked, what is her role? They told me, oh, she's just housekeeping lady. I said, she's housekeeping lady. Why the word just? Imagine if you are a brilliant operation or doctor or surgeon, but your operation theater is not clean.
Right.
The probability of infection will be so high.
Exactly. Yeah.
In today's world, COVID, yeah, not only the virologist is important, the guys who are keeping the place clean is important. So if any doctors can just say thank you to the sweeper and say, you are part of my infection control team, their job as sweeper will have meaning.
True.
So
Very
for me, Prabha, my job is to facilitate learning. And everybody's job must have purpose. Once you know the purpose, you will create meaning. Once you create meaning, you will have joy in doing your job. We call that karma yoga. Back to you.
wonderful. Wonderful. Thank
I
you.
want to say something here before we go further.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how many of you have heard the story of John F. Kennedy when he went to NASA he was going to be given a presentation when America wanted to put a man on the moon. And
Yes.
he got on from the helicopter, went straight to the washroom. And as he was entering the washroom, the janitor there stood up and said, "Good morning, sir." He said, "Good morning. What are you doing here?" He said, sir, I'm helping America put a man on the moon.
Wonderful.
And when he went for the presentation and before the people could start, he says, I don't know what presentation you're going to give, but I know that we are going to put a man on the moon where even the janitor feels that he's a part of the team.
Fantastic.
So if the purpose there was not I'm cleaning the bathroom, the purpose was that I'm helping America put a man on the moon. That is the importance of what Prabha just said. Absolutely important. And I have a story around that which I put on the chat in the chat. If ever you get a chance, listen to this Purpose of Life, a Purpose of Life video by me. It's on the stage where I talked about my purpose of life. It said, how should you have your purpose of life? Thank you.
Wonderful. I think, yeah, everything starts with why, right? And, we also hear so much about Ikigai and, what is a passion? What do you do well? What does the world need? And that probably is the starting of any successful career. Thank you so much, both of you. I wanted to ask, from where you stopped just now, what would you say would be perhaps the top one or two key ingredients of the armed forces that you can liken to the business landscape? I mean, we know the business landscape and the terrain keeps changing all the time. 5 years ago, businesses were saying that this is a very challenging situation. 10 years ago, they were saying it's a very challenging situation. Today, we are still saying it's a very challenging situation. It keeps being challenging all the time, right? So what is that ingredient which in the armed forces, which you would say can be likened to the business landscape, and how would you deal with it?
Nara, it's very, very difficult to talk about one. There are so many that come to your mind simultaneously.
We only have 1 hour, sir. But
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying that we only have 1 hour. So, but
yeah.
I feel talking to you both.
Leadership.
This time.
Leadership is the main thing. What we learned from the army is that everything is based on the leader. And the leader takes the responsibility for the blame. The leader takes the responsibility for success. He is 100% responsible. But very quickly, I'll say that now when you talk about one thing, obviously top of the mind is time management. Because I feel what army taught me about time, and I've done a TED talk on this. There's a TED talk I've done on, it says, what army taught me about time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a story in that, and I'll briefly try to say that story, that, there's a friend of mine, a colleague who fought the Kargil war. And in the Kargil war, he came out telling me that when he went on to the objective and he was mopping the objective for any survivors left. So he had his gun and he was looking around in the darkness, looking for if there are any survivors left. And he says, well, everything was quiet, nice. We thought there's nobody there. And suddenly from nowhere, a top burly young captain from the enemy was standing in front of me with his gun pointing towards me. He says, we were standing just a yard away. His gun pointing towards me and mine towards him. And a thought came to my mind that now only one of us can survive. And the one who will survive will be the one who pulls his trigger first. He says, sir, I'm telling you in all this time, but there was no time to think. There was no time to take advice. There was no time to analyze. It was time for action. I took action. I pressed the trigger and he dropped dead on my feet.
Wow.
And I looked down at him and he was crying. And I said, what if he had pressed the trigger half a second earlier? Right. Then I would have been crying there like he is doing that. And then my mother would be crying like his mother will do now. And that one little incident taught me that life is worth millions of rupees. And that is why the title of my book was born from there, $1 Million Second. Don't you think that half a second was worth everything in life?
Certainly.
That is what the army teaches you. Because at every step you have to be. So like in the Indian Army, and those who know, and it would be applicable to any army, have you seen the Republic Day parade? In all these 60 plus years, whatever the count is, we have never had a single aircraft coming late on the Rajpath for the Republic Day parade. And they fly from 14 different airfields. There is no way when the artillery is supporting the infantry for an attack, there is no way that you can be late. So we don't even know what commitment to time doesn't mean. You not being committed to time, not being doing what you're supposed to do at a particular time, particularly when it's critical. Yeah, you're going for a party late, it can be okay, but can you be late on parade? I think being late on parade is a sin. We don't do it. And when it happens so casually in the corporate world, that is the first thing I say, guys, you first need to have discipline, you need to have a routine, and you need to have commitment, all related to make time your biggest currency.
Currency, yeah. Good. Well said. Very well said. Thank you. Major?
Thank you.
Yeah. I love the idea of discipline. Let me take on from what Brigadier Sushil mentioned here. In the army, discipline is very, very important. But discipline is not something you can measure. If you say, Prabha, what is your weight? I can tell you 85 kilograms. What is my height? I can tell you 183 centimeter. But when it comes to discipline, discipline is how you demonstrate it outside. For example, time management. Whether you are the president of the country or whether you are the servant at the president's palace, everybody have the same amount of time, 24 hours. No one can command to even have 1 second more or 1 second less.
Yes.
So the whole idea of managing time is managing self. Meaning, when Brigadier said about the parades, the aircraft and the entire mechanism is coming on time. Meaning, there was so much of planning when perhaps 1 or 2 days earlier. Because for parade, just to prepare the uniform alone, it's a project. Right. Especially people like Brigadier who has many medals and put it in the right order and so on. It will be an iron, shirt, shoes, everything, and ensuring your people are in order. So my take is discipline. And what does discipline mean? Discipline in my context means ability to say no to short-term pleasure that may affect your long-term happiness. Don't get me wrong, friends. I'm not saying don't have fun, but you and I have one special ability, thinking and visualizing. So when we do something that's going to affect our future, it's all about decision making. Army has taught us make the right decision. Like what Brigadier said, a 30-second late, meaning you are dead. Every moment is the decision-making process. Right. The quality of your decision will influence your quality of your result. So are you going to make your decision based on your sensory organs? You know, for example, if you're running a business, you may have a little bit additional cash. Would you like to show off with your new Mercedes-Benz? Or you want to invest so that you have enough cash flow so that during tough time, you will be able to manage your cash and manage your business well. So for me, Army taught me discipline. But were I a very disciplined man all my life? Not really. Let me tell you a story. I was in the naval base in Lumot. I was family man. Some of my friends, bachelors, used to come for weekend for tea or dinner or lunch, you know, especially those who are staying far. So some of the brother officers used to come. So one day in the army, we are very, very particular about health, and we do our medical checkup every 6 months. That time I was doing my master's and I was traveling a lot, and I did not pay enough attention to my fitness. And my glucose level was within the safe range, but it was a little bit higher. And the army doctor came to my house for tea, and there was a wedding in his Kuala Lumpur. So he brought some laddu, and I was about to take my second laddu. And the guy told me, Prabha, remember your glucose level? At that moment, my father was about 80 years old then. He just stood up. He went to the wall, wear my army uniform with my graduation in front of all my friends. He said in Tamil, Ni oru muttal. Brigadier, Ni oru muttal means you are an idiot. And I was a major. You are a stupid. I got a shock. Why is this old man telling like that? He looked at me and said, you call yourself an army officer. You call yourself an educated man. You call yourself a graduate. And you call yourself a father. If you don't even know to take care of your own body, you are not fit to be called a man of honor. And I can't say anything. By then I have many paper qualifications, but my dad lived up to 92 years old, healthy.
Wonderful.
At 90 years old, he reads about 8 hours per day, more than me, a PhD holder. So my take, my friends, the one best thing I had from military is discipline. Discipline is ability to say no to short-term pleasure that may affect your long-term happiness. Again, every day is a battle between the coach and the critic. Who you feed more, that guy will win. So if you want to make your coach better, go and listen to General Sushil's talk and many other speakers' talk so that the coach will become healthier and they make better decisions. Back to you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's very good.
I also say this in the same breath, what is self-discipline? And when talking of discipline, we are not talking of the discipline that policeman or somebody else is instilling on you. We are talking of self-discipline. And self-discipline, quite akin to what Prabha has said, and I would really like to go for that definition of the short-term pain or no to a long-term happiness. But I say it like this, self-discipline is what you ought to do even when you don't feel like doing it or when no one is watching you. These are the two conditions. If you can, you know what you're supposed to do. You know that you're supposed to go for a walk. You know that you're supposed to do exercise. But if you don't do it, then you're not self-disciplined. So when you don't feel like getting up and you still do, when you put on the seatbelt, even when the policeman is not watching you, knowing that it is for you, not for the policeman, that is self-discipline. And that is what we are born with.
True.
You're born with means that you're trained in the army to be, you know, when you're born in the army, you're trained to do all this. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. I think discipline, focus, instructions, and they also will come with rewards and punishment. So if you learn that from the army, and I know that many the first things which they actually bring to their corporate life, discipline, and some people just cannot get used to it, but the leaders are already implementing it top down. So I can definitely resonate with that. One of the things I think there are quite a number of questions which are coming out in the chat box, and I would encourage everyone to put them in as quickly as possible so that we can definitely address them as much as possible. One of the things which I wanted to ask you both, the business life or the corporate life sees so much of chaos and crisis throughout its lifespan. So again, bringing back to your experience in the army, what would you say would be the top 2 or 3 principles that you have seen or you have applied that you would then think of applying if you were in the corporate world? And I know Brigadier has talked to me once about a BMW and things like that, but what would you do in the terms of resolving chaos and crisis?
You know, Nara, I would start with something like this. I do it in an audience, and today the audience is not a live audience, and we don't have videos on, and we can't be taking those questions and answers. But if I ask a person in an audience normally, and I say, what is that something that a man fears a lot? And normally the death does come as one of the top ones. And then I ask people, are soldiers humans? And they say yes. And then why is it that a human soldier walks into the battlefield and doesn't run away when death is so imminent? And when I ask this question, and I would like you to write in the chat box, what do you think makes a soldier do something which a normal citizen may not be doing? He walks into death willingly, knowing that there is a good chance that he may not be alive. Why doesn't he run away? Why does he keep moving into the barrage of fire? Please write down in the chat box, what do you think it is? And when I ask people, I'm not getting the answers straight away. I thought people will be fast on their fingers. Okay, so somebody...
They all are listening to you, Brigadier.
Yeah, but they don't listen with their fingers, they listen with their ears. Dedication to nation. Okay, so some people say dedication, nation, about the team. Some people say patriotism. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the army soldier is as patriotic as you are. He's not more patriotic. He doesn't die for his country. He dies for his battalion. He dies for his leader. He dies for his comrades. Now, I would ask you, and I've asked many audiences, tell me what would happen if you get a bullet on your head. Please tell me what's your reaction if you get a bullet on your head. Tell me in the chat box. Of course, people say, where's the time to react? I'm dead. Somebody says, I'll scream, I'll panic. But I'll tell you a short story of one of my regimental officers from Bihar Regiment. And I see Kamal Mehta also here from my regiment. He's in the audience. So this young officer of 17 Bihar, we were in a counterinsurgency operation in the valley, in the Kashmir Valley. And there was information that some terrorists have come into a house in a village, and there was a need to go and nab them. So there's a drill we follow. So this Captain Jubin Matthew was standing outside covering fire, and another captain went inside scanning the place and looking for the terrorist. But without seeing anyone, suddenly there was something, a shot fired, and this man fell on the ground. Now, Captain Jubin Matthew did not know whether he was dead or alive, but you can't leave a person inside like that. So he crawled, he picked up this man, and when he was carrying him out, he got a bullet on his head. Now, he was wearing a helmet. The helmet got shattered. He didn't die, but he had a severe head injury. He was evacuated from Srinagar to Jammu to the hospital. And in the hospital, he was treated for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then he was granted sick leave, which means go home, rest for a month, and then come back to the hospital. If you are found fit for duty, you join the duty or you get further treatment. So this man, who was supposed to get into the train that night and go to Delhi, which was his hometown, instead of doing that, he catches the next bus early in the morning, the transit bus to Srinagar, and goes and reports to his battalion. So the commanding officer said, no, you can't be here because I can't go against medical advice. You're supposed to be on a sick leave. He said, sir, we are 20 officers authorized in the battalion, and we are only 12. If I go away, I'll be putting my burden on 11 more officers. So they'll have to work more. So please allow me to contribute to the battalion. He says, but you're not allowed to. I can't use you. You are medically not fit to go into an operation. He said, sir, but there's always a duty officer who stays behind. Let me do that job. I'll not go out. What will I do at home? I'll watch TV. I'll also sit here and attend telephone calls and do the log and all that duty officer's job. So the commanding officer could not take a decision. He asked the brigade commander. The brigade commander was very, very happy. He said, this is exemplary stuff. Let's allow him. And he says, take it in writing that he's doing it at his own risk or his own willingness and not being forced. So that was done. And this man started working in the unit. In another 2 weeks, there was another case, and he went and he got a second bullet injury. I want to know from people, how many of people do you know in the corporate world who will do this? Please write in the chat box, how many times do you watch people in a corporate world who will do that? And I get about 3, 4 nuns. And I've seen some people in the corporate world have also done things like this, not as dangerous or something, but they've done things like that, selfless. But it doesn't happen easily. And the question is why? Because if you ask people, his own brother may not be doing that. You have 3 brothers, 1 brother in the army will do it, the other 2 in the corporate world will not do it. So what is it, that difference? The army doesn't get its people from Jupiter and Mars, or they don't import them from other countries. They come from the same villages, the same schools, colleges, the same universities. The difference, if somebody can write, what's the difference? Why does it happen in the army? You will say training, you will say discipline, all that is again fine. Those are the instruments. But there's one big reason why it happens. Can somebody write down that? What is that one reason? And I know there are some people who have attended my workshops and somebody could have even heard me saying, no, it's not coming up. There's one word, or let's say 2 words, organizational culture. It is an organizational culture. When you step into the army, you see everyone is doing that. You realize that this man I'm dying for, the man I carried on my shoulder, I went and picked him up. There's an accident on the road. You will have 50 people watching. Nobody will go and pick up that person and help him. Why did this man crawl and pick him up and get a bullet injury in his head? Because in the army, we get to realize that when crisis happens, my father, mother, brother, sister, friends are not there. These are the people who matter to me. And we die for each other. I was just watching on the TV the other day, the Kargil operation, how the whole battalion went to get the dead bodies back. We don't even leave our dead bodies behind. And in a corporate event, in one of the trainings, and I'm not naming the company, it's a very big company, we had an exercise, an outbound exercise, where we took people out on a hill and we had a leader. There's an exercise that we used to say, okay, the leader is dead. Now what do you do? And there was a girl who was the leader. We asked her to lie down with the eyes closed, pretending to be dead. And now the discussion is happening, what should happen? And 60% people voted that let her be there and let's move forward. People said, but at least you have to cremate. They said, doesn't matter, we don't have the time, because if we do that, we'll get caught by the enemy. Then somebody said, you can't leave her dead like that. We have got a stretcher, let's carry her. And then somebody said, we have got one stretcher. If somebody else gets injured, what happens? The person who's dead is already gone. Let's save people who are not dead. And when we came back and we had a voting, how many people would leave her behind? How many people would carry her? 60% people said they would leave her behind. 40% people said they would carry her back. And it was very difficult for me to handle the situation, because the regional head who had got this program organized was also in the 60% who felt that she could be left behind. And listen to me, if any one of your HR people, human resource, I said you only remember the resource, you've forgotten the humans. How human is your resource in the corporate world? And then I just said one thing. I said, it's your company, your culture. If 60% of you feel you leave her behind, let's ask her, what does she feel? She says, I feel horrible. I feel that this company is going to use me till I'm useful. And when I'm not useful, they'll throw me out. And then I just told them, I said, guys, you belong to a country which in its history had never left its dead bodies behind. That's a message I would like to leave you all with. How can you be dispassionate to your people? You call human resource and you think they are robots? Are they machines? That is what army teaches us. And these things go strongly. And if you see why I get so emotional about it, I say, how can you be inhuman?
Yeah.
If we Now you see that in one of our battalions, let's say there have been 20 people who have died in the Chinese operation. Do you think we'll leave them? Do you think we'll blame them? The first thing the commanding officer said was, it's my fault. He didn't say this man didn't do this, the Chinese did this and all. He takes the blame. My fault. So that is what I want to leave you with.
I can definitely see that something which you are very, very passionate about, Brigadier. So, Major, what is your take on that?
I'm still digesting and enjoying Brigadier Sushil's messages.
Yeah, I
Such
like
a
the part
wonderful,
about how human is your resource. I really love that part.
wonderful. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
While listening to the wonderful stories of Brigadier Sushil, he brought me almost about 30 years ago when I was a cadet. We went to a hill for a jungle walk, and we had our own operational training. I was a cadet, yeah, and it was all well structured, well planned, and some of our other officers and a few other instructors, they went for another operation, and there was an explosion, and 4 of them died, and a couple of others had badly injured. But immediately, a little bit of a modification done into our exercise, but it went on. No major changes. The instruction is very clear. Things don't go according to plan. Things go wrong. But managing chaos is what you guys are trained for. No enemies will attack you on time.
Right.
Things don't go wrong according to plan. What army teaches us is readiness. There's a saying, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in war.
Wow.
The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in war. What does it mean in the corporate world? For example, when your company is doing well, you should be engaging people. Companies like Google with 55,000 employees, they hire scientists, social scientists, to understand what makes people engaged. You see, knowledge workers, you cannot force people to be creative.
Right.
You cannot tell them, you come to work 8 to 5 and you be committed, you be creative, cannot. You need to make them work from their heart, then you get their hand to work.
Awesome. Yeah.
Part of my shipbuilding project, I was responsible for technology transfer. Our technology partner were in Germany, Hamburg, Blom and Voss. So when I went there, I was asking a technician in one of the workshop, hey, can I talk to your supervisor? And I guess the technician was thinking in Germany, he was a little bit upset. He told me, Prabha, I know my job. Why do I need a supervisor here? For him, if you put a supervisor to ensure I'm doing my job, you are insulting me.
Right.
No? He said, I'm a professional. So they work so calm. And I don't need to introduce about German technology. Even a public bus driver, he manages his time so well. If he's 2 minutes ahead before the next station, he knows how to manage his time well because he knows how important time is.
Right.
So my take from the army is one fundamental. Manage yourself. And do it because your own personal standard. In today's world, we talk about branding. You know, sometimes people hire consultants to do branding. For me, very simple. Your thoughts influence your feeling. Your feeling influence your action. Your continuous action becomes your habit. Your continuous habit becomes your personality. So if you want to improve your personal branding or personal result, pay attention to your thoughts and ask yourself, what influences your thoughts? If you want to have good muscles, you need to pay attention to diet. You can't be eating papadam or you can't be eating junk food, McDonald's, and expect to win Olympics. You need to have basic discipline of having the right diet for the muscles. But in today's world, we are not fighting war with muscles alone. We are fighting war with brain. I'm not only talking about conventional military war, I'm talking about war in business, war for customer. So we need to fit our mind with what we call as intellectual diet. While we are easy to get information by Google, YouTube, etc., we must also be careful to know there's a lot of rubbish. So a good mind is someone who knows how to filter what is nutrition for your mind and what is destructive for your mind. Be selective. Be selective with whom you are associating with. Because you are an average of 5 people you are associating with, say some expert. So
Right.
don't allow junk thoughts influence your mind.
Wonderful.
Back to you.
Wonderful. I love that thought,
Absolutely,
action,
absolutely great.
habit, and personality. I love that. I want to ask you because Shobha just mentioned to me that there's quite a number of questions which have already been in the chat box. Can I take a break and we go to some questions and then we will come back again because I know we have so much of content that you would love to cover. So Shobha, if I can ask you to read off the first few questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nara. Hello, everyone. I have a question here from Mr. Vijayakumar Rajagopal, which is addressed to the Brigadier. He says that Army is generally autocratic. In the corporate world, leadership comes in different flavors. So can you please, Brigadier, talk about your journey on adaptation and learning to learn?
I feel there's something misplaced there. The very first statement to say army leadership is autocratic is, I think, wrong. That's not so. Within the army, we have leadership styles, and I've seen some of the most democratic leaders in the army. There is something about military leadership that is very, very strong, is what Major said is about self-management and teamwork. Army is the best way of how leadership happens in the army, with team as being the most important. In the army, you will find almost 100%. There can be some people who may not be living to those standards because there are human beings of different varieties. But let me tell you that a commanding officer or a leader will always take the responsibility on him. And some of the very good leaders, and one of them is Brigadier Dharam Prakash, who for me is my guru. You know, I learned from him when I was a very young captain. When I saw that there was a major thing happened, that one Jawan in a unit fired and killed another Jawan by mistake. It was an accidental thing. Because it was foggy, he couldn't see him, and he thought it was somebody who was stealing, and he fired, and it turned out to be our own person. The first thing my commanding officer told his boss was, "Sorry, sir, it's my fault." He didn't say there was fog. He didn't say that he didn't follow my orders, whatever. He didn't say anything. And then the same commanding officer, when the same boss, we used to have DDST that time, and he came for an introduction. We were 5 officers standing in a line and we were being introduced. So he went, he said, "Sir, this is Major Bhogal. He virtually commands the battalion." and I only supervise or I only oversee. Then he came to me. I was the next one standing in the row. He says, sir, he's Captain Bhasin. He's my trump card. Where nothing else works, I use him. He used 5, and before that he said, sir, let me introduce you to my 5 gems. He may have kicked us when we needed a kick, but when it comes to the boss, he only praised us. A few days later, when the DDST went away and we used to have a circulation file, and in the circulation file, I find a DO letter written by my commanding officer to the boss saying, sir, this is my update on whatever you had said. Number 1, so-and-so thing had to happen. This has been completed, and Major Bogle did a great job in completing this. Then he says the railway claims, your second point was railway claims. We had 100 railway claims. In less than 2 months, we have been able to reduce them to only 22. This was done beautifully by Captain Bhasin, who went to Guwahati and got it done. All that he said, he had somebody to point out that he has done it, not I have done it. This is something that happens in the army, and that I think is the major leadership value that takes us forward. One general came to our battalion when he just came to take over the division, and it was just he was promoted from a brigadier to a general, and he came to for a we call it a dining in party, and then everyone was congratulating him. And he just laughed out and he said, I don't know why you people are congratulating me. I did nothing. It was my 3 battalion commanders who promoted me. If one of them had not worked, no matter what I was, I wouldn't have been a general. And it was those 900 people in each battalion. It is their job. If one person had run away with a weapon, if somebody would have done something wrong, I may not have become a general. So why are you congratulating me? Please go and congratulate those people who made me a general. So we have grown with these examples. So if I've answered your question right, leadership in the army is not autocratic. It is actually a very democratic thing, but it's a mix. So the same thing applies, and I have been able to apply most of the army leadership lessons in my corporate training. And I think Prabha has done the same thing, and we resonate so much. I think anywhere in the world it matters. And one thing about the army, I'll tell you, is whether you're from the Indian army or the US army or the Chinese army or the Pakistan army, there are fundamental common things which are there in all armies. There may be variations in various culture and other things, but the fundamentals of soldiering, the fundamentals of leadership, I think are universal.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Nara, if I just add something to what Brigadier said.
Go ahead.
Again, about 30 years ago, maybe this was about 25 years ago, when I was reporting for duty in the Officers Training School of the Royal Malaysian Naval College. My commanding officer, I can still remember him. At that time, he was Commander Marzuki. Later, he became Defense Endanger of Malaysia to China. On his wall, it was clearly stated, if 2 persons agree with each other all the time, one of them is not required. If 2 persons agree with each other all the time, one of them is required.
Lucky you told me that. I was almost going to say I agree with you, but now I won't say it.
Yeah, Commander Mazuki, right after that, he told me, Prabha, how is Sita doing? Sita Lakshmi is my wife. How? And, she got a transfer from a school in Sarawak, another state, to your town. How, is there anything I can do? I thought, how do he know? Like what Major Brigadier Sushil says, in the army, we have a culture we call DO letter, demi-official letter. So before I joined the unit in Lumut Perak, I wrote a letter. In the demi-official letter, we are supposed to share our personal, and it's not very formal. But my commanding officer have never seen my wife, but the way he talked, as if we are a family. So the element of being able to say no in the right way. So you don't just say no to your bosses or your generals or leaders anywhere in the wrong place.
Right.
Because the purpose of a soldier is to make, like what Brigadier said, to ensure our superiors looks good. My aim is go to work is very simple, to make my boss looks good, to help him to win.
That sounds very much like the corporate life as well. I think many
End of the day, you got to remember, in order for you to serve your external customer well, you need to serve your internal customer.
True. That's
Very good. I
common
think
concept.
you have more questions, but let me just butt in and say something. And I was telling Nara and Prabha in the morning when we just are doing a little coordination that these are some of the things I'd written I'm going to say, and I've said none of them so far because we are going by whatever is flowing. And I'm suddenly reminded that when I was doing the staff college in Wellington, we had a commandant called General Balaram, another person I really love and I respect him a lot. Now, he was delivering a talk on leadership. And he said right in the beginning that the subject of leadership can be taught by any of my colonel instructors as well as I would do, maybe better. But I'm here to take this talk with one aim, that you all realize that I'm taking it because it's the most important talk of the course. So by one thing, he said that I'm doing it because he was giving leadership the importance. And then in that talk, somewhere he said, I've generally been asked by people, what's the secret of your success? And he says, I think what they mean is, what's the secret of your promotion?
Okay.
And he says, let me tell you that secret of success and secret of promotions are two different things. And what he said was very profound. He said, you can be a very successful lieutenant, or you can be a successful havaldar or a sepoy, and you can be an utter failure of a general. The success and failure doesn't go by the rank. He says, what I want you to remember is, it is not how you do, it is not doing something, it's not what you do, it is how you do. Whether you do something as a captain, you do it very well, you're more successful than what you do as a general and goof it up. Then one more thing he said, if you ask me now, and I guess you are saying, what is the secret of your promotions? Every rank, my colleagues used to tell me, you are not going to get promoted to the next rank, because I was always disagreeing with my seniors. And he says, I only remembered the Chetwood Hall, which said that your loyalty, we say the safety, honor, and welfare of your country comes first, always and every time.
Right.
The honor and safety of the men you command come next. Your own comfort and security comes last, always and every time. And he says, I'm here for the loyalty to the organization, not to an individual. And when I want to disagree, I disagree respectfully, because my loyalty is not a loyalty of convenience, that whatever my senior is saying, I say, yes, sir. That is not loyalty. And he says, every time I disagreed with people, they soon realized that he's absolutely, genuinely disagreeing for the purpose of the organization. And the army teaches us that you are here to serve the organization, not individuals. There's another thing which in the corporate world works very well. If people start understanding that I am not here to get an appraisal from my boss, I am here to get an appraisal from the Almighty, who sees that I am loyal to my organization.
Right. I can see that, looks like the army probably needs some better public relations, because they may be conveying a wrong impression from what you are saying. So that's probably something that we need to think about.
I'll tell you, I'll answer that question also. People in the army, when we talk about it, they said, we are not here to go and convince the people that what we are doing. We are not here to project. We have no time for PR. We don't need it.
Yeah, true.
We don't want somebody's certificate or somebody's validation that you're doing a great job. We don't need it.
They got a duty to perform. Yes.
So we'll concentrate and perform our duty. We are not looking for kudos. We are not looking for appreciation. We are not looking for validation.
Good. We'll go on to the next question. Shobha?
Yes, this question is from Mr. Anil Goswami. He'd like to know that when you are in the battlefield, what is in your mind? Is it your family or nation or something else?
Who's the question for?
This can be handled by either one of you, Brigadier.
Go
So
ahead.
it's your question, sir.
When we go into the battlefield, I don't think anyone looks at the family and all at that time. That time you have crossed that thing, you're only looking at killing the enemy. You're only there to achieve the task. That's it. And what is there around you is the men around you, how you take care of the success of the mission. Success of the mission becomes a single point focus, and all that goes with it. That's it.
So let me just,
Sure.
in the armed forces, you don't take a job. You don't say, I have worked for 20 years. No, we say we served for 20 years. It's a serviceman. So the moment you exchange your civilian identity to military identity, you were willing to give your life. So
Wonderful.
you are on a temporary life. If you survived, you get back your civilian IC, then you are back to your civilian life. So the moment you signed up as a military personnel, man, officers, you are willing to give up your life. So that
Absolutely.
is why.
You signed a blank check that day. You signed your blank check that this is my life for you.
Exactly.
You signed your life to your nation.
So in Malaysia, for example, I'm sure it's same in India. Even as a young captain or a lieutenant, I don't get my appointment letter from the general manager or HR director. I get my appointment letter from the king.
Yeah.
In Bahasa Melayu, our Malay language, we call that watika. It's an honor.
So we have a parchment. Yeah, we also have a parchment which is given by the President of India, nobody else.
Exactly. So we are representing the king. So when I give an order, that's an order from the king. So as a soldier, you are giving service to the nation and you are willing to give your life. Let me share one story if we have a bit of time. I was academics in a university after I finished my military service. There was somebody, one of the professor was telling, Prabha, armed forces, we are a peace nation. Malaysia, we don't have any crisis. Why are we wasting money on the military? I was very young then. Was very, very upset. I just went to a whiteboard and drew a Malaysian map. And I said, Straits of Malacca is the busiest strait and it is the lifeblood of our economy. Majority of trades are happening along the Straits of Malacca and our petroleum is drilled in the South China Sea. In the 1970s, when Malaysia were transforming from an agriculture country into manufacturing country, we got investment from all over the world. We attracted foreign direct investment. And among the main reason is security of our nation. If you remember that time, Vietnam was not safe, Cambodia was not safe, Indonesia was not safe, and Malaysia is among the safest country in the region. If the risk level on Straits of Malacca go up, the cost of doing business will go high. Immediately, the foreign direct investors may pull out, and the following day, millions of Malaysians will be unemployed. And unemployment will cause major social effect. Right. So never say, just because there's no war, armed forces have no role. That's what we call ourselves defense forces, not offense forces.
Yeah, That's awesome. That's really
Back
awesome.
to you, Mr. Nara.
Very good perspective. Thank you, sir. Shobha?
Yes, we have a question from Mr. Sridharan Ramakrishna. He says, how does the Army evaluate failures and what can we learn from it? And this is to either one brigadier or major, please.
I'll take the question.
Go ahead.
I was a student at San Antonio Air Force Base in Texas, America. As a young officer, I saw a unit in American Army which says Center for Lesson Learned. Center for Lesson Learned. So whenever we come back after our operation, there is something called AAR, After Action Review. What went right? What went wrong? What need to improve? What can be used in other places? So every time something goes wrong, that is a lesson. And based on that lesson, you improve. So in the civilian world, when you are doing projects, some of you could be project managers. In projects, we have project closure report. In project closure report, we are required to document the lesson learned. But if you only document the beautiful, nice part, that's what mistakes get repeated. One of my senior officers told me once, Prabha, mistake is an event. It's not a person. Learn from mistake and become better. Brigadier, sir, yours.
Very good. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I don't think I can, I need to do more. You've done justice to the question. Any other question?
Yes. Shobha, any question?
Yes, please. Mr. Aruladas Muruganesu has a question. He would like to know, how does the Army philosophy help us to handle stress in the corporate world? And this is also to either one of you, sirs.
Yeah, Prabha.
After you, sir. After you, sir.
Okay. So it is how do we handle stress, you said? It's basically what happens in stress is when it is a matter of attitude, it's a matter of mindset and heart set. I always say that, you know, a paradigm shift or a transformation does not happen from the mind, because the mind knows it. The mind knows, when Prabha wanted to have a laddu and his glucose level was not allowing him to have it. He knew, the mind knew, but the heart was the one which is creating a chaos. So we look at changing the heart. And what in the Army we do is, we have a type of a psychological training over the years that we don't get as stressed, because we handle things which are very, very more severe. So if you say, my keys are lost, and you'll get stressed. That is what, or in the corporate, today my laptop is not working, so there's stress. We handle things which are so much more grave that we don't look at these things. So it's a matter of training your mind and training your heart to be able to take things in a stride and work on them rather than think about it. I still remember when I was a very young lieutenant and somebody was worried over something, my commanding officer said, please tell me, what is the last time when you worried something and it became okay? If it did, then I would like you to start worrying a little more. So, you know, right in the beginning, you're told all these things and they come out. And, you know, in the same breath, although it's not the same question, but I want to say something about it. See, in the Army, there is a major, major difference when it comes to the way we work on motivation, on stress and all these things. What is motivation? We don't have a man of the month. We don't have incentives. We don't have, what is it called? What is it? ISOPs. We don't have all that. We get the same pay. Even if you go to war, you don't get results. Nobody says your performance in the war is this or that. If you get a gallantry award, it doesn't have any significance because you may not get a gallantry award and still be happy about the work you did. We handle mistakes differently. We handle stress differently because our mistakes come back in body packs. If we make a widow today, she remains a widow for life. You lose a man today in a company, you'll get another one. Our soldiers don't get replaced. And our soldiers don't go and join another company. They join another world. They go up. So we treat everything with a different perspective that it is, I still remember one of my friends called Captain Raghu. He was addressing an audience and I was there with him. He says, you guys are stressed on what? He was talking about leadership at 29,000 feet and he was at 20,000 feet. He's talking about Siachen. And he was giving an example of a person, a dead body lying there, and the helicopter can't come and take the dead body away. And for 3 days, people are watching the dead body lying there. Of course, you don't need to use any preservatives because it's so cold. There's a natural fridge around there to keep it safe. And he says, look at my tragedy or look at my challenge that I have to maintain the morale of the people who are seeing that body lying there for 3 days till the helicopter came. And he says, what is your stress? Your stress is that we have not made our targets this week or this month. That's your stress. So he says, don't get stressed over major things. Why are you getting stressed over minor things? So that is, I think, the lessons we bring from the army, that look at things that matter, look at the bigger picture, and don't get stuck on speed breakers and potholes. You're a bulldozer, you will go over them. You're not a scooter that your wheel will get stuck in a pothole and you'll sit down there, what do I do?
Excellent.
If I can just add a few from perspective. I like when Brigadier Sushil said, don't major in minor things. Don't major in minor things. Yeah? And listening to him reminded me perhaps another doctrine or principle of war is Bhagavad Gita. The entire 18 chapters, all the 700 verses, is talk about Arjuna's preparation for the Kurukshetra war. And what was the message? Pay attention to your action. Do your action properly. Focus on what you can do. And the consequences of the action is not 100% with you. There are so many other variables beyond your control. But stress happens perhaps when our expectation and reality does not meet. So my suggestions to Mr. Aruldas and all our friends, including myself, pay attention to your action. When you are able to do it, do the best possible way. Stephen Covey used the word circle of influence. Circle of influence in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is pay attention to what you can do. Don't let what you cannot do stop you from doing what you can. And the ability to accept it with what's called prasada buddhi perhaps can reduce the probability of stress. Back to you, Mr. Nara. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is life lessons, actually, not just talking about the battlefield and the boardroom, but these are true life lessons. Thank you. Shobha?
Yes, the next question is from Mr. Ramesh Krishnasamy, and he'd like to know, how do we create a winning culture, as culture matters in organizational leadership? And this is also to either one of you, sirs.
So, organizational culture, I think, comes again from the values. And in many corporate organizations, I find that the values of the company are either not formulated. I have recently done the training of a jewelry company in India, and I'm telling you, they don't have their values. They've never formulated. they are whatever their was a family business. So whatever the second generation, now the third generation is looking after the business, whatever the forefathers had said, and whatever these people have understood is going on, but it's not documented. Now, organization culture is, and I lay a lot of emphasis. In my corporate training, I've been giving a lot of emphasis on, or laying a lot of emphasis on organizational culture. Because if your values are well formed,
Nice. Jeevan,
okay,
need some help, please?
yeah, okay. So what I'm saying is that firstly, do you have values that are formulated? And secondly, are they communicated? In many companies, and I've told you, I've embarrassed some companies and they were feeling bad about it. Of course, they did it very respectfully. I can't name a company here, but one of the top Indian companies, And I was doing that training and I was quite new to corporate training. So I had gone to their website, I picked up their values, they had 5 pillars. They said so-and-so company's 5 pillars. And I took each one and printed a full-scape sheet of paper. And we were doing an outdoor exercise. So there were pillars and I put one on each pillar, but I inverted it though they were blank papers. And I said, I want to know what are your 5 pillars. And they all looked at me, they didn't know. I said, on your website, I found that your company has 5 pillars. There are 5 values of yours. What are they? They again were silent. I said, okay, you may not remember them verbatim, but can you give me what are the values of your company? So then they started coming out. Some were right, some were vague, some were applied, whatever. And then I said, I'm not naming that guy now because he's so famous. I said, if he comes to know that the middle level managers of his company don't even know the 5 values that he has created with so much of emotion. Organizational culture is developed by values and a code of honor. Many companies have it in different forms. Many companies don't have it. Some have it, is not communicated. What your values are have to be known down to that man who's standing at the gate, who's a security guy. I have a very good friend here, Chandra Sharma, who's one of the best sales trainers I've seen. And I've heard him say, and I've been using his statement in many corporate trainings and say, how many salesmen do you have in your company? And people will say 20, 30 or whatever. I said, how many people do you have in your company? He said, 1,000. I said, don't you have 1,000 salesmen in your company? Isn't everyone actually contributing to sales directly or indirectly?
Yes.
When you walk into a company, and I've had personal experiences on that, the first impression I form of a company is when I go and my car is stopped, and from there on, what happens? Somebody will just take your name and let you go in and take the picture of the car and have his own procedures. And somebody will take 20 minutes to make you stand in a line, sign a register and do all that. Okay. And all of those procedures are funny. So in one company, I was cheesed off because I was getting late for a meeting and I said, I'm in a hurry. He said, no, so you have to fill this register. So there was a register, which I think everyone was filling. There were queue. So I also filled up. So he said, telephone number. I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It said name. I said Amitabh Bachchan. And then something else. I said something. And then I signed off. And he said, thank you. I came. Then I came and rang up. I said, can I talk to the chief security officer? What security is this? You're making people line up there. So I will form the impression of a company by what your procedure starts at the gate. Aren't you a salesman? You have not sold your product to me. I'm not convinced that this company has got values.
Right.
So organization culture, I think, it goes from the deep down way people think. That's very important.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Major?
Yeah. I was a leadership trainer in one of the glove company. They are leaders in the world, actually. And normally when I go for the training, I'll ask them, among other things, hey, who are some of your great leaders? Who are the great leaders? Generally, I won't specify anything. So names like Mahatma Gandhi, Professor Abdul Kalam, Martin Luther King, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, Lee Kuan Yew, all John F. Kennedy, all these people's name will come. I will list down them, then I will tell. Do you know none of them were able to make love to make it a world-class company? Then I'll ask them the next question. The fact that your company is world number one, you identify who are the leaders in your organization who contributed to that. So the big things they do well. Because sometimes we remember the greatness outside there. It took me some time to remember among the greatest leaders that I had is my father and mother.
Right.
Sometimes I talk about all the big names out there. Sometimes I don't dig down the greatness that we have within. So the fundamental question, if you want to create a winning organization, you need to identify the strengths that you have. And at times as a leader, we got to realize the best medicine don't taste good.
True.
Sometimes what makes people like Brigadier and maybe myself is all the punishment that we get during the cadet time. Sometimes you think you cannot run one more, but when you go for 40-kilometer march at 30 kilometers, you say, I cannot. But you are much more capable than what you think you're best. Right. Sometimes you need a tough leader to remind you your strength. So I'm suggesting all of us to open up our heart and mind, perhaps even the person you hate most. Tweak the question separately and you ask, what is great about him or her? You will definitely find at least one thing. Right. And build from there. Thank you.
Yeah. It's like what I heard, when they say you have another, like when you're doing a marathon and you have 40 kilometers or miles to do, you actually do half a mile at a time. Just think you only need to get past the half a mile. You need to get past the first, another next kilometer like that. So it's exactly like what you're saying. Thank you, sir. Shobha, do we have any more? Because I myself have another 2 more.
Yes, we actually have 4 more questions. Everybody's excited now to ask questions.
Okay. Well,
okay.
we're running a bit ahead of, behind time. It's almost like 7:15 and we were going to finish at 7. Are you all okay to continue? What about you all, Brigadier and Major?
I'm okay.
I'm enjoying myself.
Yes, we can add on another 15 minutes.
All right. Go ahead, Shobha.
Sure. The next 2 questions are from Mr. Vijayakumar Rajagopal, and this is to either Brigadier or Major. His first question is, how can we make personal time management a basis to a culture wherein everyone's time is respected?
Very good. This is a question which comes straight to my heart. So in my, so I'm doing a program these days called Crisispreneurship of Time. And one of them I'm talking about is a compounding of time. And compounding of time is 2 ways. One is in the corporate world, where how do you take care not only of your own time, but everyone's time. So to begin, let me tell you that I normally ask this question to many CEOs or MDs, and I asked them, I said, how many hours are you responsible for productivity to your company? And the answers would be something like, okay, let me see you guessing in the chat box. If you were asked this question, even if you're not a CEO or an MD, but imagine what an MD would say to this, that how many hours are you accountable for productivity to your company? Let's have some answers there in the chat box. 8 hours. Sorry, 8 hours, yes. Or is it 5 hours? I can't. No, it's 8 hours. Okay. Somebody else? I want to see at least a couple of them. How many hours do you think a person would be? 24 hours? Anyone else? Okay. I think the audience today is not feeling like exercising their fingers a lot. Okay. 8. Okay. So normally people would say 8, 9, 10, whatever. And very recently I had the MD of a general insurance company, a very big general insurance company in India. And he was sitting in the audience and I said, sir, how many hours would you be accountable for? So he says, normally I'm there for 8 hours in my office, but my productivity is just about 5 hours. I said, thank you very much for being honest and telling in front of your own people that your productivity is 5 hours. I said, can I ask you another question? How many people are there in your organization? So he said some number, but let's say 1,000. I said, sir, aren't you responsible for 8,000 hours a day? Are you responsible for not you? Because when you hire an employee, you actually buy his time. And if your employees are responsible for 8 hours, aren't you responsible for all those people? Why you hired them was that you couldn't do work, so you hired other people so that you could buy time. So really speaking, by employing people, you are buying time. And if they are not doing well, aren't you responsible?
Yeah.
He says, yes, I didn't think about it. And then I went a step further and I said, okay, supposing I train you now, or you do your self-learning and you increase your productivity from 5 hours to 6 hours. I want to know from you in the chat box, what do you think would happen to the next channel link, say next chain of command? So if there are, say, 8 people reporting into this MD, what do you think would be the effect on their productivity? Would it increase or no? Yes or no? Just because the MD's productivity goes up from 5 to 6, do you think, so somebody saying increase, somebody says yes, yes, okay. Similarly, now we look at, okay, 8 people plus 1 MD, 9 people. And we train these 9 people to increase their productivity. Do you think the effect will go down? And then it will trickle down to the last man. I call that compounding of time. Right. And when I said this to, there's a gentleman called Michael Podolinsky, who has been training for 37 years in productivity. He's based out of Singapore. And so I had a meeting with him in a boot camp that we were doing, a speakers boot camp in Goa. And I got a video on that. And I asked him, I said, you are a productivity guru. I do time management. Can we have a conversation, which we recorded? And when I told him this, he said, Sushil, I'm teaching this subject for 37 years. It never struck me that your time is not your time is everyone's time. He says, can I start using it in my workshops? I'll quote you for it. I said, please go ahead. Now, I'll go to the personal life. So this is corporate life. In personal life, is my life being affected by my time affecting me or other people's time affecting me? Am I affecting other people's time? I went to Bangalore and I booked in a hotel and I found that I'd done it through hotel booking, whatever, some app. And I didn't like the hotel. And nor was it as close to the venue that I wanted. So the next option was that there's an army club there called RSI. So I took a cab, went there, asked him, do you have a room? He said, yes. So I decided to check out from the hotel and come to this place. I said, okay, I'm coming. I'll take that room. So I went, took an Uber, brought my baggage to RSI, make it stand outside. And I said, okay, I'm just coming. I thought I'll just collect the keys and come. So this clerk there says, no, sir, you have to first fill a form. I said, I'm in a hurry. Can you please give me the keys? I'll keep the baggage and then come and do all the formality. He said, no, sir, I can't give you the keys till you fill the form. I was getting a little irritated. He's not understanding that I'm wasting people's time. But he insisted I had to fill the form. It took about 5 minutes. Then I had to pay by credit card. All that was happening. And this Uber driver rang me up. Sir, I've got another person waiting for me. Will you please hurry up? I told him, please hurry up. There's somebody waiting for me. So by the time it finished and I came, this cab driver was furious. He said, sir, somebody is waiting for the cab. And the moment he was saying that, I heard another ring. And the lady came and she was yelling. She says, I booked this cab and it said 5 minutes, 10 minutes ago. And after 10 minutes, still says 5 minutes. Aren't you moving? Are you stuck in traffic? I just took the phone from him. I said, ma'am, I'm sorry. It's my fault. Tell me what, I'll do it as quickly as possible. She said, sir, I'm missing my flight. I have to go and address people in Delhi. This evening, there are 1,000 people who are going to come to that hall to listen to me. Do you think I can afford to do that? I told this Uber chap, I said, let's go to that lady. So I didn't go to my room. I went to that lady, handed over the cab to her, took my baggage, put it in another cab and came back. The moral of the story is, did I know, did that clerk know, did the Uber driver know that any one of us delaying her was affecting 1,000 people? That is what is happening in our life. We just think we are going to take 5 minutes more, but we may be affecting other people's time.
True.
Okay. And that's what I just realized, that I said, I'm okay to spend more time, but I've got a meeting at 5 o'clock. So I will not be able to spend more than 3 minutes. And then I'll have to, because somebody is going to come there, his life could be affected. And I can't take chance. I can do it with my life. When I'm getting value, I'm getting a lot of value being here. So I'm loving it. But the moment somebody else gets affected, I can't do that.
Very good. Thank you. So, sorry, Brigadier, I was not very sure whether you meant you have to go off in a while.
Yeah, so no, I'll wait for another 3-4 minutes. 5 o'clock is the meeting. I just want 2 minutes before that. But otherwise, then I'll switch on from here only directly into the meeting. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, Shobha, did we have, sorry, I was going to ask Major, but I just want to be sure whether we have finished with our other questions, and then we can do a wrap up as well.
Mr. Nara, we have 3 more questions. Would you like me to proceed?
How are you placed, gentlemen? Because I know if Brigadier is going to go, then we will not be able to continue. But we did say that.
No, I think Prabha will take the questions. Let him, that wouldn't matter.
Okay. Very, very good delegation of power and authority there.
Yes,
no, there's no authority. There's no authority. I think I am learning so much from Prabha. So I've learned a lot from him today, and also in my 2-3 other conversations with him.
Yes.
Prabha, thank you very much. I think there's a lot to learn from you,
Yes.
and I really respect that.
You know, there were a couple of other things that we really did want to touch on. You know, we wanted to talk about interdependence. We wanted to talk about the weakest link, and about feel, think, and do. I think we had so many more wonderful things that we wanted to speak about. So I'm really feeling constrained about going forward. But so let's do a quick question, Shobha, and then we will move on.
Yes, so the other question that Mr. Vijay Kumar had was, heroic leadership is giving way to collaborative leadership. How can the armed forces experience help us?
Oh, that's deep. Heroic leadership.
Sorry, what I missed the question.
Just repeat that, please.
Sure, sir. The question is, heroic leadership is giving way to collaborative leadership. How can the armed forces experience help us? And this is to either one of you, sirs.
I think it's a very, very good question. And again, I'll tell you that the army leadership only teaches you collaborative. And that's why I said it's not really autocratic. Really speaking, today, you see, there was a time when in the industrial age, there were managers. And the manager said, I know it, do it. And then we came to the information age, where the management led to leadership, where people said, let's do it together. And today we are in a thought leadership stage or a digital leadership stage, where people say, who knows it? So you don't say we know it, who knows it? And you delegate to him and say, let him take the lead. The leadership today has to be agile leadership. It has to be it has to be absolutely a collaborative leadership. It is not so much of democratic. You have to understand the difference between democratic and collaborative.
Yeah.
Democratic still has an authority. Today is that a leader has become a facilitator. He takes the best out of, and particularly one factor that I'm seeing practically in life today is the millennials. The gap, the thinking gap between the old school of thought and the new school of thought. And that is very important, extremely important, that we gel with them. And sometimes these people have beautiful ideas, and we must take it from them and not keep saying, you know, I used to do it like that. When I was in Udhampur in the Northern Command, we wanted to do an exercise of reforming our transit camps, because our drivers used to be traveling long distances, and at night they used to halt in a transit camp, and we were not sure whether people have hot food, whether they have proper beds and all that. So I was given this task, can we refine these? And I ordered a board of officers. And when that file went up to my general, he called me and he said, I'm very surprised, such a major task, and you have got one captain and two lieutenants to do it. I said, sir, if I give it to a major, he will give me old ideas. And he will not go in a vehicle. I've told these people, you will travel in the convoy, experience what a driver does, go and stay with the drivers in the transit camp and see where you lack comforts. And then we'll see what we can do for men. He was not very sure. He said, the idea looks good, but I have not seen it ever functioning. And I'm telling you, we succeeded in getting such a great job done because these people did exactly what I tell them. They traveled in the co-driver's seat of a 3-ton vehicle, a Shaktiman. They went and stayed in the camps. They did not stay in the officers' mess. They stayed. I told them, you have to stay in the camps. Please do this for 10 days. So they traveled from Jammu to Srinagar, saw all the transit camps en route, and gave out beautiful comments. So you have to be collaborative. There's no doubt.
Yep.
And in the corporate world, you say, how can the army help? Army can't really go and help. It's only that if you can pick up army ideas and learn. And from people like me who do trainings, I do battlefield to boardroom. Get people who can train you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. When I hear the word collaborative leadership, you know, the world in the army, for example, you know, we are so much dependent on data, right? The cyber security, the big data. While all of us are having our conversation in the virtual, in WhatsApp, in Facebook, in LinkedIn.
Excuse me, just a minute. I think now it's time. I'll have to leave. I'm so sorry. I would love to continue any amount, but I think in the interest of somebody else's time, I think I'll have to.
Yes. Thank you so much, Brigadier.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
I want to thank each one of you for staying back. I see there are 58 people out of 70 who stayed back. I really honor and respect you for having the patience to listen to us. And thank you very much. I really...
We will
Thank
catch
you,
up
sir.
with you again
It's a
very
pleasure.
soon. Thank you. I do feel bad to proceed without Brigadier, but are you okay, Major? Then I think we will just take these two last questions and we will also close down.
I'll miss Brigadier, but so you will get the second option answer. I'm sure the best answer.
It's okay.
I was enjoying learning so much from Brigadier.
Yes.
But let me try my best to share my thoughts.
Sure. Go ahead, Shobha.
Okay, the next question is from Mr. Lakshmi Narayan. How did you adjust and adapt to the people who are less disciplined, more chaotic, and more stressful in the civilian life after your service with the armed forces?
Sure. The whole idea is we can't expect everyone to be the same. So even someone who has less discipline, you can't be transforming a person overnight, right? It takes, sometimes people think, oh, send him for a team building training, send him for leadership training and so on. Believe me, my friends, I've been in the training industry 31 years. Training is only like a seed. You know, you get the best training is like a seed. You know, you have the people like General Sushil conducts wonderful training, but that is a seed. What organization to do is what we are going to do post training. So I remember I was working in a shipbuilding company. My big boss was also an admiral from the Navy. So he told the head of departments at that point of time, we didn't have time to come in. You know, we had some flexibility. I was one of the head of department. So later he said, nope, everybody need to have the time you clock in. And every meeting must start exactly at the time schedule, say 9 o'clock. If anybody come at 9:01, it's lined and it's documented in red. It's only a simple procedure. Documenting, no major shouting, no major arguing or whatever, no punishment also at the beginning. It's just documenting. Just that one action transformed many elements. Why in the army we are so particular? Even 1 minute late, you will be answerable for it. Because if you are not able to plan your own time, that means you cannot plan your life. Because in order for you to reach a place, let's say 20 minutes, you need to start planning what are the possibilities things go wrong. So this is where you need to have the buffer. Traffic light, maybe, you know, there could be 101 reasons. So you need to do a simple planning, and ability to come on time is the reflection of discipline that is easily measurable. So this is what happened, and slowly things changed. So if at all a person need, for example, let me give you an example. If I know friends from Singapore, for example, in Singapore, if you throw rubbish, immediately you will get punishment. The same person, let's say Prabha, I come to our Malaysian state just across the bridge, and I throw the same rubbish, nothing will happen. So what makes Singapore such a disciplined nation is the enforcement. And the leader of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, at the early stage of his life, he was hated. But when he passed away, I was a few weeks before that, a few days after that, I was conducting a training in Singapore. The cab driver told me people lined up for 10 hours in rain to give mark of respect to Singapore, founding father Lee Kuan Yew. And he was enforcing discipline. So if you want to form an organization culture, you cannot be expecting everybody to like you. But as I told just now, the best medicine hardly tastes good. So you need to take the action. Even it means that person need to face the punishment. Because if you're not enforcing the rule, you are not being fair to the organization.
Thank you, sir. Last one, Shobha, is it the last book?
Yes, this is the last question, the final one from Ms. Prema Subramaniam. How do we handle politics among siblings? That is, sibling rivalry.
How do we handle politics among sibling rivalry? I have to make some assumptions here. What we mean by politics, there could be insincere, or there could be wrong intention, etc. I can't visualize the word politics in that context. But I was managing a project. I was part of the shipbuilding project management, and I'm not a project manager. I'm a chemistry graduate and an expert in instructional design. And I was, let's call at the beginning of my life, I was an accidental project manager. Because just because I'm an expert in instructional design, managing a project related to training and conducting training is two different skill sets. So I bought a book on project management. A guy called Lewis. This is way back in 1998. And there was a chapter in that book. I was so surprised to see a chapter managing office politics. So in the same context, managing politics either within the sibling or within the organization, that is a skill that we need to have. My suggestion is follow the procedure, follow the guideline. If something is wrong with the guideline, follow the protocol to change the guideline. But respect individual and in the beginning, you may not be the most popular person, but you will have a good reference. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. I think that's very, very good. It was a good wrap to the conference. Shobha, that was all the last questions.
Yes, Mr. Nara, that is the last question. Thank you, Major.
I think, so Major, really want to appreciate you and Brigadier. And he just sent a personal message to apologize that he had to rush off for the other meeting to ensure that he, meets up with them. And he actually sent a book for each and every one of you, a book that he had written recently. Is on COVID, time management, etc. And I know we had a few more topics to talk about. Like I said, some of Major Prabha's, good content relating to interdependence and etc. So I believe we are in tune for another session, and I believe we have more audiences who actually apologize that they could not attend for today's. And so what Jivan has done is he has put this session on YouTube Live as well. So I am not going to attempt a wrap up in terms of trying to summarize. I would be repeating, many of the things which both of you have so wonderfully said. A very, very big thank you to you, Major Dr. Prabha. I think we all enjoyed ourselves immensely. And we will be in touch with you so that you can address the audience again another time. All right. Thank you so much. And I'm going to call on